Is early arm bend in the clean killing your gains? What's the ideal clean and jerk to back squat ratio? And is the squat jerk something you should try? In the first episode of the Last Set Best Set podcast, Coach Calvin and I dive deep on each of these topics. And if you love weightlifting and you want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to the channel.
I'll let you start off, Brian. What are your thoughts on the clean arm bend?
So in the clean, I'm not a huge fan of arm bend, but it's more allowable than in the snatch, in my opinion. Some people just feel a lot stronger with getting that bar into the hip crease. And it kind of depends on how long you've been training. Like if you're an early stage lifter and you're like really trying to pull that bar into your hips with your arms and you don't have super long arms or something like that, then I think it's something that you should probably try and get rid of, especially just any elevation of the bar with your arms for the most part. Now the only difference on that would be only like allowance on that would be like if you have a lot of arm bend, but you also have super long arms, and it's just kind of something that you have to do to get the bar into any good amount of like leg contact, as long as the arms don't re-straighten as you pull, like during the pull. So if they stay bent throughout, good. If they stay bent up until the hips and then you extend and then the arm drops and the arms re-straighten out, then we see like loss of acceleration of the bar, and typically you also be a lot slower into the bar. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's an important distinction to kind of think about, and it's like, oh, is this arm bend changing throughout the pull?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you actually, yeah, like pulling on it to try and get the bar higher? Or is it kind of just an arm bend that stays like throughout that entire pull? Um, and that could be another thing as well. Like we look at like how someone's gripping the bar. Like if they're gripping the bar really tightly, their wrist is going to be more straight, which might cause their elbow to be bent more. Whereas if you're more loose in the grip and trusting your hook grip and your thumb a little more, it'll be a little more straight versus that tension trying to pull this part of your meaty pinky side into the bar, versus just trusting the thumb. So that's another consideration, is like that grip and how that might affect your arm bending. Like personally, I definitely deal with that a lot. But my arm bend stays the same throughout the entire clean. And it does allow me to sort of have like a slightly higher contact point. And so you got to look at it like holistically. Like, you see a lot of lifters at the high level, that are following like pretty standard principles. Like it's really rare that you see someone rowing the bar into their hips at the high level, although there still is people doing that. Um, but I would say that it's a lot more common to see people with a slight arm bend that stays the same throughout the whole pull, at that high level. So you kind of got to look at like okay, like are all people at the high level keeping the bar close? Like yeah, like that's like something that you should really consider if that's like your technique flaw. Like you really need to hammer that in. But then there's other ones that are like, well, if this works for you, we might not want to change it immediately. So you gotta learn kind of who you are as a lifter. If you're a new lifter, it's good to follow like a really good technical model, but certain things might just not work for you long term. Like you might. One thing I'm dealing with one of my athletes is his jerk rack position. So he likes to have his elbows really high, which is generally thought about as not being great. You want to have them a little lower, a little more spread out, if you can still make that shelf there. He's not really able to do that, like mobility wise. So kind of having those elbows higher works for him in that situation. Although it's still something we might work towards over the long term, doing different mobility things for that. But it's not necessarily the biggest thing limiting him from lifting more weight in the clean and jerk.
I really like what you said there about the about looking at what are the things that all successful athletes are doing versus what are the things that some athlete might do, like 1 out of 10 or something like that, and trying to focus mostly on doing the things that all the best athletes do, and then those things that some athletes do every now and then, not necessarily trying to replicate those or assessing whether that's like the best thing for you.
Hmm.
That's a really solid point. You have to ask yourself a lot of the time with successful athletes when you're modeling their technique, are they successful because of this technique or despite this technique? Um,
Yeah, a
you
great
know,
example is you look at like Carlos Nassar, who a lot of people like
I
really
was going to say
flame.
the same thing. Yeah.
They really flame him for having like bad technique, um, and like a lot of that comes from like I would say like what his upper body is doing. Like he really lets his upper body tip over and then get very far behind the bar when he's after the hip. But we look at his lower body and like generally kind of like his speed under the bar, how close he's keeping the bar. Like okay, maybe he's jumping forward a little, but his knees clear amazing, like clearing the road for that bar really well. And he's being very active in the turnover, and getting a lot of lift on the bar. So it definitely like works for him. Um, might not work for you though. Not it's like it's completely different. Like weightlifting, you'll see all different kinds of limb proportions, and you could have so many different variations, and not just even like leg to arm to torso length. Like you could have long legs, but does most of it come from your femur or most of it come from your tib and fib? And that might change how your lifts look. Where the same then you throw in like how rotated your hips are. Your hips might be more retroverted or anteverted, like pointing forward or backwards. Um, and that could completely change how your squat position looks. Um, Looking at like how mobile your ankles are could change how your lifts look overhead. Like there's so many little things that could be different. So you gotta really take an individual approach, and you can't look at any one person, high level athletes like technique to try and emulate.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of like rounding out that question, sometimes it can be okay. Try to make sure that it's not happening as a result of trying to elevate the bar with your arms as opposed to with the legs. And then a good rule of thumb is that generally, if the arms have to re straighten during the lift, or if it has to continue to bend more as the bar gets closer to your hip, it's probably something you want to avoid. But if you have a constant bend, and the arms don't re-straighten after extension, you're probably going to be okay with it, especially if you've been training for a long time and it would be a little bit too much of a two steps back or one step back, two steps forward to try and fix it. But it could be something that would be important.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our 12-week squat program. It's officially winter arc season, and there's no better way to do it than by bulking up, buckling down, and squatting big. You can grab the program at the link in the description below, and for podcast listeners, you can use the discount code LASTSETPOD to save 15% on your program. All right, back to the show.
What's the ideal clean and jerk to back squat ratio? This one's from, we'll say this one's from Anon on Instagram here. So what are your thoughts on this?
One of my teammates here at Lindenwood actually did this was his thesis project looking at all these ratios, and what they kind of were on our team. There's definitely like identified ratios, like Russian sports scientists like did this in the past, like, and I kind of forget the exact numbers. I believe clean and jerk to back squat was supposed to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80%.
Yeah.
And then a snatch was like between 60 or maybe 65% of your back squat. Or your snatch is about 80% of your clean and jerk as well.
Mm-hmm.
Does this matter? Hard to say.
Yeah.
Like, is this a tool you could maybe look at and say, like, hey, like, my clean and jerk is, 60% of my back squat, what maybe even your snatch should be. Oh, maybe I do have like a serious problem in my lifting that I need to address. But did you already know that before you looked at those ratios? Like probably, like
Yeah.
you probably noticed that, oh, I'm squatting 250 kilos, but I only clean and jerk 140. Like, yeah, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like strength Olympic lifting ratios are something that is like a good way to maybe measure or identify if there are any weak points. But for the most part, common sense will probably do that for you. You know, if you, yeah, like you're saying, if you're squatting 200 kilos and you're clean and jerking 100 kilos, uh,
Yeah.
you you know that it's not like you know that you probably just need more technique work on the clean and jerk or more training or practice with it because you might have a background in powerlifting or a background in like field sports and you have lots of practice squatting but not a whole lot of practice doing clean and jerks or something like that. So like with your Olympic lifting to strength ratios, I think it's an interesting tool to use and check in every now and then on. But broadly, like it will vary from person to person a ton. Mobility is a big part of it. Experience as a lifter is a big part of it. There are really kind of a lot of factors that go into it, but the biggest one is just technique. Most of the time, what you'll find if you have a way off ratio is that it's just that you don't have a whole ton of experience or technique in the snatch or the clean and jerk. Now, if you've been training for a long time and then you assess these and you have great technique, then it can be a good tool as well to see if there's anything that you need to focus on. Like maybe you just kind of let the squat slack for a little bit and you need to push the squat a little bit more. That could be the case if you find yourself starting to creep above 85 or even 90% of your back squat. But generally, like 80 to 85% is a good range, and you'll most of the time find that that sounds like common sense when you're really looking at your numbers.
So I definitely think like people that get really into the weeds on this like ratio stuff and these real like nitty gritty like super tiny details about weightlifting, like these are the kind of people that like, and there's no shame in this. There's no like this is like most people go through this stage as a weightlifter. Some people stay at this stage, or some people maybe don't even get to it at all. But it's like this idea that you need to perhaps only do squats right now because your squat's really bad.
Yeah.
And you just need to like do some crazy squat program for the next 4 or 6 weeks to get your squat up, an extra 20, 25 kilos, and then you'll be good at Olympic lifting after that. It really just doesn't work that way. And so it's like this kind of like, it's like fad diets. It's like, oh, like instead of like building healthy habits that are long lasting and like really like get me to my goals like over a really long period of time, like I'm gonna hop on keto and lose a lot of weight really quickly, but then when I get off keto I just gain weight again, and okay, wait, no long-term progress has actually been made. So like don't get caught up in that idea of like, I need to, my ratio is bad, or my, like, my snatch is so much less than my clean and jerk, so I just need to, do something crazy in the programming, or do some crazy program that only focuses on this. Like, yes, you can add more squat volume if your squat's worse and it needs to improve. If that's clearly what's limiting your Olympic lifts, like, I highly recommend. But does that mean run like a squat 4 or 5 times a week program where you're only snatching and clean and jerking like full variations like once a week maybe, and like you need to take a holistic like really long-term approach to your lifting, and that's kind of what a lot of people lack. Like they see how like months add on to months, but how like lose sight of like how years of training add on to years of training and really build on each other, um, in that way. So like really don't get too caught up in that kind of stuff and like make drastic changes based off of it, because like realistically you need a good coach that has a good really thought out like long-term plan for you, and then you'll be good to go.
That's such a good way of putting it. Man, people absolutely a lot, especially a lot of beginner lifters or a lot of people without coaches, just will be like, oh, my squat ratio's off, and then they go hard on the squat program, and I'm like, you're training like the exercise selection that you do should largely look pretty much the same all year round. Like you're still going to snatch and clean and jerk from the floor 1 to 2 times a week at least, if not more than that. You're still going to squat, back squat, and front squat each at least once a week. Still got to do your pulls, still got to do your accessory work. Like it's not going to change all that much. It may just be like a little bit of extra squats in trade off with some extra pulls or cleans or something like that. It's not like you have to hop on like the perfect program. It's just small trade-offs here and there over time.
Yeah, you look at like someone's like maximum recoverable volume, like you're all just playing inside of there as far as like what like you can dish that up in like a more normal balanced way where snatches, clean and jerks, squats, accessories, everything's being balanced. Or you could do it in a really hard way where most of it is coming from squatting, and your Olympic lifts see like a pretty stark downturn there. And I think that's not necessarily the way to go, but depends how extreme you're going. Is it like you go from 20% of your volume as squats to going to 50% of your weight put on your body, that your total tonnage is squats? Like that's like kind of crazy. And so
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be doing that. This is a sport where a lot of things matter more than just your leg strength, more than just your squatting strength, even if it is the number one thing limiting you.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, all right, that was a good one. Let's go ahead and go into the next question. So, I've got this one on my Instagram. 2 weeks out, Masters lifter. Last heavy session was not good. Should I do another one or taper? This one's from Tone's Workout. So this is a really good question, and it's very interesting timing because I've been writing our taper program for some of our FSU athletes. Um, and this is a tricky one because as a masters athlete, you typically will not be recovering as fast as other lifters, or um, but also if you're not a super experienced weightlifter, then the weights that you're doing might not be that hard to recover from, even if you are a masters athlete. So it kind of depends on your experience level. I think 2 weeks out, I probably wouldn't do another heavy session like that, like a full max out session at 2 weeks out, but you could reasonably work up to a heavy single and then maybe a opener clean and jerk or a final warm up clean and jerk. But it really depends on how much you would say that you benefited from the 12 weeks or 16 weeks leading up to this competition. Um,
Yeah,
uh, yes. So I would say you could maybe go up to a heavy single on the snatch and a moderately heavy clean and jerk, because that'll be what really beats you up the most. Um, but as long as you start doing that about a week and a half out, I wouldn't wait another week and do it at the end of the week, because you might be getting a little too close to game day for that. But then start pulling back the volume and intensity a little bit in the final 2 weeks leading up. What are your thoughts?
yeah. A good rule of thumb is like for like a normal athlete, like it's a little tough, like you said, for a masters athlete. It's going to be a lot different. I said normal athlete, just median age athlete, probably in their 20s or so,
Yeah.
is like about 10 days out, you're probably hitting your last like max out, like really heavy clean and jerk. About 7 days out, you're probably hitting your last like super heavy snatches. Um, and then after those points, like you should only be hitting probably opener or lower numbers. Like dialing in those openers, really reducing the volume of other stuff, especially in that week of training. Now again, yeah, if you're like super, what you might say like inefficient in the Olympic lifts, like say you squat 100 kilos, but you're only clean and jerking about 40 or 50 kilos, um, like that you could probably withstand going pretty heavy up until maybe even 3 or 4 days out. Hitting openers like 3 days out because they're not very fatiguing on your body. The newer training age you have, like you said, Brian, and like yeah, you might add like so we talked about being a masters lifter might take away recovery time, and maybe instead of 10 days out, your last heavy clean jerks 12 days out. But then also you might just be an inexperienced lifter, so your last heavy day could be even closer. So if you're like super dialed masters athlete, if you're like Tom Dewar, like snatching 150 at like 50 years old, um, like, yeah, you definitely want to take like a more normal taper approach to what a high level athlete would be doing. Um, but I think that the biggest thing is like, don't think your last heavy day has to be really good.
Yeah.
Like, don't like for this person asking the question, like you don't have to, hit all time PRs on your last heavy day to be able to do well in that comp. Like, if your program was working well, you're probably pretty trashed even on one of those last heavy days. Like, like you probably don't feel very good.
Hmm.
And hopefully you've hit some PRs in the weeks leading up to that. But don't put too much, stock in one last heavy session where all this fatigue is on your body right before you taper.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Like the last heavy workout isn't the make or break for a competition. I've had competitions where my last heavy workout went really well, and then competition was bad. And then I've had competitions where my last heavy workout went really badly, and I did great on the competition. Like just like we all know this with any training session, but like having one bad session doesn't really mean much. It could have been a little bit less sleep the night before. You could have been not locked in with your with your with your nutrition for a day and a half or something like that, or it could just simply be a bad day. It doesn't mean that the competition's not going to go well, and as long as like you still did the work leading up to it, you still got all the benefits from the training, and more than likely you're going to do a great job on competition day.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I noticed living and training for about a month with Olympian Hampton Morris was even somebody so dialed into all the details that really is doing everything right, like most days, day in and day out. You can't really predict when he feels good or when training is going well, even. Like, even at this highest level where everything is being controlled, all the variables are being controlled for. A lot of like positive outcomes of training are in a way mysteries when they happen day to day. Like, you could have no clue. I mean, obviously, if you take 2, 3 days off, like, you're gonna feel good. Like, there's like big overarching principles here. Like, you pull back the volume a lot, the intensity's high. That's probably when you're gonna be hitting heavy lifts. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're in the middle of volume and you hit a new PR on something, and you're like, "That's crazy. Like, why do I feel so good?"
Yeah.
So you can't really predict this kind of stuff. One thing's for certain: you do a good taper for a competition. If your headspace is good, if your nutrition, your everything's good, like you probably be set up to hit some really heavy lifts. Like, that's the whole point of the taper: set you up to hit some really heavy lifts.
Yeah. That's a great one. Let's go into the next one because I think this lines up pretty well. What goes through your mind on the platform?
Like the competition platform
Yeah.
or just in training, you
I'm
think?
assuming that it's the competition platform. This one's from Lanky Weightlifting.
Ah, yes. Isaac. Thank you, Isaac, for the question. Um, like in competition, like I don't really have any thoughts. I'm not really running through like a list of things I need to do. Like, maybe if there's like one thing that's like on the last attempt, say, my coach is saying, be patient, be patient. Like, that's kind of like in my brain a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to be patient to the hip, or whatever that like personal thing is. Like, maybe I have one cue in my head.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, that's a lot even. Like,
Yeah.
you don't be having to think very hard on the comp platform.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly how I feel. I don't really do any cues personally for my lifts. It maybe if there's something that I could do a little bit more, something really simple. But most of my energy is just dedicated more towards effort rather more than anything else. Um, Mindset wise, I like had this breakthrough at my last competition. I figured out exactly what I need to do. For me, snatch is have fun. Like if I'm in a good mood when I'm snatching and I'm locked in, but I'm like having a good time, I always perform better on snatch. If I carry that same energy into clean and jerks, I'm gonna have a terrible, terrible clean and jerk. I have to if I want a big clean and jerk in competition, it is just lift with as much hate and fury as possible to get through it. And that works pretty well for me. So for snatches, it's have a good time, and for clean and jerks, it's hate. That's it.
Um, I think one thing I notice a lot. This is kind of like something I'm big on lately. is how people are approaching the bar, and how long you're sitting hands on the bar before you lift it. I
Yeah.
see a lot of people sitting there for 15, 20, 30 seconds before, like with their hands on the bar. What are you thinking about?
I
Like
yeah.
what do you mean? What kind of like stages of the like are you thinking about four different cues in each part of the lift that you have to do? Like,
It's too
I
much.
mean, like whatever you're thinking about, you're probably better off just ripping the bar off the floor and going. Like that,
I get too tired if I get tired if I'm holding onto the bar for that long before I start. That's a waste of energy, in my opinion.
especially in the clean and jerk. I've just been left hand on bar, right hand on bar, and then I'm going. Like,
Uh,
and it really helps keep the intensity high and reduce any thoughts of those like questioning like
yeah,
what, this is 165 kilos. Like, oh my, like, wait, I've only lifted this once. Wait, I've only, like, this is really heavy. Like, just, it gets all that out, leaves
yeah,
less time for overthinking, and you're
yeah,
just going. You have no thoughts other than just pull, pull, pull. And it's hard to turn on that, like, mode if you're not the type of person that turns on that, like, go mode. If you're the person who's always thinking about technique to improve, like, that's really good for, like, 80 to 90% of your training. There is that 10 to 20% where you have to like just put it all in and throw all those cues out the window.
yeah,
Forget about
absolutely.
them.
And you have to practice that in your training too. For some of you guys that are like technique overthinkers, like always working on technique nonstop, it might be a good thing for improving your technique, but one major aspect of weightlifting is turning your brain off and just being an athlete, like performing. And so,
Yeah.
like, if you're not good at that in training, you're going to feel that in competition. So it's good to practice doing that in your training if you haven't yet, and that I think might be one of the big advantages of like a big Friday kind of style approach to training, where you're at least going a little heavy, something like that once a week, can be an advantage for a lot of the overthinkers. Um, Whereas if you're like that all the time, just in your own head, then maybe you need to be that person that's focusing on their technique a lot more. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a solid approach for competition. Okay, let's see. Question. This one's a good one. This one somebody sent in from the FSU team. So mindset for extended plateaus. How do you go about that if you're experiencing extended plateaus? And I kind of have uh, I would say maybe more experience with extended plateaus. The way that I've been thinking about it recently is that train no matter what, and don't, like you may not be able to set PRs or like do really good work, but I think there's a lot of ways that people tend to think that they're plateaued when in reality they're just in the work right now, and the payoff hasn't happened yet, right? So like if you're consistently, maybe it's like every snatch above 60, you tend to shift your balance back onto your heels. Now we haven't gone for a new PR, right? But now every 3 out of 5 reps, you're not shifting your balance onto your heels instead of 5 out of 5 reps, you were shifting your balance onto your heels. That's progress. That's not a plateau. That's improvement. It's just we tend to, especially younger athletes, we tend to only focus on the snatch and the clean and jerk as like the only measure of success, and it is the end measure. It's the final one, but it's not the only measure of progress. And so that would be one thing that I keep in mind there, is like try and find ways to validate whether you are actually in a plateau or not, or are you just in the weeds of training right now and it's going to pay off in a little bit.
Yeah. I have a lot of my teammates like come to me um like really like nervous like, oh, like my squats haven't felt good in 5 or 6 weeks. Like, I haven't like James is preparing for the FISU games. He's on a really hard program right now, an international competition. Um, and maybe he hasn't snatched above 140 in 5 or 6 weeks. His PR is 155. Like, he hasn't hit above like a 90% snatch, and and he's going heavy. He's trying to get up there, and he's just not capable of it right now. And he's freaking out. Like, it's easy to go into this freak out mode. Oh my God, what's wrong? I need to change something. But really, like there's two like thoughts in here. Like one in my head, what I have to tell these people is, doesn't matter, keep training. Like, just doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does not matter if you're having a good day today, or last week, or 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, or if they were all bad. Like, you just need to keep training and focusing on the things that you need to do to set yourself up to be as good as possible. Now, you have to have an extreme trust in your coach and your system and your program to know that this is, a good program, to know that this is working, this works well. You have to be really bought in to, have this mindset of like, no, I just need to keep training.
Yeah.
A lot of people start questioning these things like, oh, well, do I need to be on a different program? Do I need less squats? Do I need more squats? I need more heavy snatches in my training? I need to snatch 3 times a week instead of 2? Like, if you just trust your program, it's going to work. Like,
Yeah.
you take the same program, the same person, and they trust it versus they don't trust it, it's going to work better if you trust it.
100%. And also, because I coach this athlete, I'm going to say this, Jake, you've been training for 3 weeks after like months off. You're not in a plateau. You just started training again. It's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. It's all going to be good. Now, a way that I read somebody explain this in a different context, it was a little bit more of like a mental health thing, was if you want to keep sailing towards a direction, it won't do you any good to pull the sails down, right? Whether the wind's blowing or not. So training most of the time, even when you're in a plateau, is just about keeping the sails up so that when the wind finally blows in the right direction, you can take advantage of it. So you might be plateaued now, keep training. Just like you said, doesn't matter, keep training. It's just keeping the sails up. That's it. Yeah.
And there is sort of the possibility that, like, yeah, this program is awful, like it's dumb or something. There is totally a possibility that you would be doing better with more XYZ,
Sure.
right? Like squats, pulls, whatever it is. Does it matter though? Like, is this really helping you to like think about this and try and micromanage everything and change every little detail and like think about, well, when I ate this before training, this is how I felt. Like, you just need to really take a big picture approach and really just be like, okay, I know this program is successful. I know it works for other people. Like, I trust the principles that are behind it. And so I'm just going to keep going and just really trust it. Just really trust, really buy in. Like, and like, yeah, there's definitely like things that would make you want to leave a coach or leave a program. Like, especially if there's disrespect or if there's, really awful communication or something, or these questions you're asking your coach are going unanswered or that kind of thing. Like, you need to have those conversations with your coach, with your whoever makes your programming, to say like, hey, like this isn't working for me, and trust what they say. When they tell you like, like, I really think you're overthinking it, like you just need to take a few more weeks, you just need to keep training, like it'll all be okay. You need to believe them when they say that, and that's hard to do. It's not that easy.
That's the hard part, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, you want to do some rapid fire questions?
For sure. You got them written down there?
Yep, I've got them. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Have you tried squat jerking before?
I squat jerked 80 kilos once, as a joke. And no, I've not done it other than that. Squat jerking, you don't have to elevate the bar as high, but you need extreme mobility and a lot more leg strength to make it happen. You should not squat jerk, whoever you are. Like really, like there's like very like such little like percentage of people that should squat jerk. Like, but a lot of people end up doing it because they can't get the split to work, which again comes back to this like long-term plateau, long-term like thing, like, oh, I need to change something. Oh, I need to change something. Like, no, you don't. Just keep trusting it.
Keep training.
Trying the split jerk. Keep trying the split jerk. Like, there's a reason, there's principles that back up why the split jerk works best for most people. Maybe you're outside of those, but I doubt it.
Yeah, same. I tried squat jerking a couple times just for fun. And no, I hit like 65 kilos and everything hurt. I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, let's go. Rahtmat or Rizki? Who do you think will be more dominant over the next quad? That's from Adam IDK 339.
So Brian, we had talked about this a little bit before, and you said you didn't really know exactly what the situation was here, right?
Yeah, I don't really keep up with it all that much.
So Rahtmat was leading the 73 kilo class through a lot of the Olympic qualification like competitions. Now Shiji Young still had like the total world record, I believe, but Rahtmat was chasing and had clean and jerk world records in both the 73 and 81 kilo class, competing as a heavy 73. And on the last qualification event, seemingly like out of nowhere, this athlete Rizki comes. Rahtmat is the clear favorite. Rizki snatches well, so does Rahtmat. He doesn't even do that badly. And in the clean and jerk, Rahtmat takes a crazy jump, misses it, like very strangely, like just misses the jerk, and then takes about 30 seconds, like walks off stage, like just is like, goes right back on stage to take his attempt again, and he kind of is getting lightheaded. It slips as he's recovering, and he misses it. He can't do it. And Rizki makes a good attempt after that, I believe, and won the Olympic spot because he had a higher total. And yeah, and then Rizki went on to win the Olympics over Shiji. Out. So, and they're both from the same country as well, Indonesia. So that's another part there. Now, having somebody that close to you to push you is like really big. So I think we're going to see, more than ever, them pushing the boundary or the, limits of what can be done in the 73 kilo class. Like maybe even making Shiji Young look like less of an athlete there. These are two amazing, really, really good athletes, Rizki and Rahtmat both. Now I'm curious to see what happens with the weight classes. Maybe the 81 kilo class is the Olympic category in LA. I think we would see both of them go up to there and really dominate in that class. But yeah, I mean, as far as like it seems like Rizki's training age is a little less than Rahtmat's, so maybe he has more potential. You never know at the high level here. We don't see a lot of their training. We don't see a lot of anything, so it's really anybody's game there.
All right, well, I'm going to make a prediction that it's going to be Rahtmat, and we'll see if I'm right in 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Next question. Does Calvin look like a Roman emperor? I don't know about Roman emperor, but I would say that he does look like a Greek god statue. And as a person who's seen him in person, I can say that is factually true. So yes, that is true. That is true. Okay, question. Oh, okay, this one's a good one. How do you do that without hurting your back?
I guess that would be referring. This was from one of my questions. I posted a clean and jerk. It was a clean and jerk PR with 161 kilos or like 350 something pounds. And I mean, a lot of people maybe do deal with back pain Olympic lifting, but a lot of people deal with back pain doing many different things. It's more about how prepared you are for this activity. What is your training status? What, is your recovery status? Like, think of like stress like one big bucket, a giant bucket. And if this bucket overflows with stress, then you're probably going to start dealing with problems like back pain, little injuries. And actually, in that bucket isn't just training. It's relationship stress, like, fighting with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. It's school stress. How much schoolwork are you doing? Maybe you're walking extra to class or you're doing things like that. Every stress in your life adds to this bucket of stress and can make it overflow. So, you have to just monitor that closely and know that you have to pull back training sometimes if everything else in your life is going crazy. Yeah, that's a pretty brief
solid.
answer.
Yeah. I would say, like, broadly, you typically won't experience a lot of pain if you follow a good training program, where you are attempting lifts that you are prepared and capable of lifting. That generally covers the bases. Like, if you just are prepared for the weights that you lift instead of just going for crazy max outs, you're probably going to be okay. Okay, so let's go. Why are you going up to 89?
I think going up a weight class is actually a really important topic for long-term development in the sport. Brian, you probably know, you just can't stay the same weight you were when you were 18 forever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not healthy. It's not really what's supposed to happen.
Uh-huh.
Um, for instance, I came into Lindenwood weighing 74 kilos. And this morning I woke up 90.1 kilos. So
Let's go, dude.
yeah. So like growing into a new weight class, not only like in the short term, yes, maybe you're going to compete worse at that weight class than you would at the lower one at your next competition. But even just looking 2 or 3 competitions in the future, you're probably going to be in a better spot in that higher weight class. Now, like, there's a really rough equation. We've been talking a lot about these ratios, equations, whatever. Roughly 1 kilo of added body weight adds like about 2.5 kilos to your total. For what that's good for, whatever. So you going up in body weight could potentially see you getting a lot of increase on your total, and in general just makes the sport more fun, in my opinion. If you stick cutting down to a weight class where your body doesn't really want to be, you're gonna not see as much progress in the numbers. Like, it's a lot more fun to hit new PRs. It's a lot more fun to get stronger. Like, you're still gonna get stronger if you stay at a lower weight class, but just at a lower rate. So I mean,
and let's not forget why we all started this, and that's to be as jacked as Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's it. That's it.
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
The
It's
goal
totally
is to get the goal is to get big. I don't understand why people are so afraid of going up a weight class, man. I get that, like, your first couple are going to be a little bit more tough in competition. You might not win as easily, but you don't want to win these competitions easily. You need somebody to push you a little bit, and sometimes going up a weight class is a great way to do that. Let's see. I think that's everything. Do you have any other ones that you wanted to do? Oh, I didn't look at the last one that you sent me.
Yeah, we could cover really quickly how to stop bar crashing.
Okay.
That's a pretty quick answer. Now, there's kind of two ideas to this, and you can't really tell unless I'm looking at your lift right now, which I'm not. Is maybe you're pulling the bar too high. Some people do this. Some people pull the bar way higher than they need to for a full clean. Usually about belly button height when you're standing, fully extended on your toes is about where the bar should get to. A little higher, it's fine. If you're pulling the clean to chest height, like a full clean, a squat clean to chest height, like, you're probably going to crash, or you're going to meet it really high in like a front squat, like top of a front squat, and then squat it all the way down. You'd rather you do that than it crash, of course, but some people might need to actually pull the bar less high and most likely stay more connected during that time. You'll see people that flip their wrists forward immediately in the clean. Once it hits their hips, it's forward. They have no leverage to pull on it. You're going to keep those elbows over it. Keep it close. So you want the pivot point to be your hand around the bar. You don't want it to be the elbow around the bar. This is bad. This is good, right?
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
That's a great way to do that. Great way to think about it. Yeah, like, most of the time it's either gonna. Most of the time, I would say for beginners, it's a lot of like not staying connected to the bar. Sometimes it's over pulling. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. Generally, like, tall cleans can be a good drill for you to try if it's the not staying connected. That could be a little good empty barbell drill to include in your warm up or something like that. But that is a good way to work on it. One thing that I found to be a little helpful with bar crash is learning how to meet the bar by doing low powers. So not super high power cleans, but power cleans where you're receiving the bar like around parallel is a good way to start getting a better understanding of like where the barbell is at and how to get to that bar as quick as you can, and absorb as well.
And that's actually about right where you should meet some of your heaviest cleans. Is about right at parallel. That's where you should have like full pressure of your collar and your shoulders into the bar, good rack position, and then you take it down the extra 3, 4, 5, 6 inches, whatever your mobility allows you to go down, while maintaining tightness. Like, yeah, that's totally right where you should be receiving it.
Yeah, that's solid. Sweet. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for this video. Yeah, and if you guys like these Q&A videos, make sure to leave a comment below and let us know, because we'll do some more of them. If you like this and you want to listen to the audio version of it, let us know in the comments, and we might consider putting out an audio podcast as well. So, yeah, that's it for this video. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
That's everything for this week's episode. Make sure to tune in next week. And for the audio-only version, you can find it by searching Last Set, Best Set Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'll catch you guys on the next one.